Hi, this is Lippy. I'm a shamanic healer, and in today's video, I am going to cover the topic of scapegoating and what are the two types of scapegoating. So, the word scapegoating came from a ritual carried out in the 1530s where a goat would be sacrificed to help people atone for their sins. And the etymology of the word is the origins apparently come from a Hebrew word called ezozel, which has two meanings. One, it means goat that departs, but it actually also is a name of a demon. And later on in this video, I'm going to talk about this because this Hebrew word from which the word scapegoating is derived, there's something very interesting that happened with me and that word, which I will talk about later in this video. But coming back to what I was saying, the modern day dictionary meaning of scapegoating is simply when you blame shift, you put the blame onto someone who is supposedly innocent for things that they haven't done, and it's usually things that you've done or a group of people have done, and they put this blame onto another group of people. And it's interesting because it in the world that we live in today, I'm going to be making a separate video about how more and more I'm realizing that narcissism is not just a problem of a few individuals abusing a larger group of individuals. I really do see more and more how societies are highly narcissistic and operate on narcissistic values, and therefore the in today's world scapegoating is very, very common. And the people who do the scapegoating are more often than not narcissists, sociopaths, borderlines to some extent. But you also have a lot of people who are not cluster B, who also participate in a more sort of collective kind of scapegoating, and it's actually far more common than we realize. Now, there's another group of people. I don't know whether to call them a group or whether to put them on the same spectrum as those who are disordered, much higher on the spectrum. And there is a word that has, a sentence rather, that has been coined by Dr. M Scott Peck in his book People of the Lie. And he calls this group of people of the lie, and he explains that they really are the true nature of evil, are people of the lie. And I am not very clear at this moment whether, as I said earlier, to club them with the disordered or to put them on a higher spectrum of the disordered. But we're going to be talking about how a lot of these people of the lie also scapegoat others. And who are the targets for scapegoating? That is actually going to be the focus of this video today. Who is targeted? Because the conventional idea is that the targets, the people who are targeted to be scapegoated, are usually innocent. But I'm going to introduce another facet to that today and show you how both the innocent and the not so innocent can and are scapegoated, both collectively as well as on a one-to-one basis. Now, the first type of scapegoating is the most commonly known scapegoating, which is you have somebody who is innocent and they become a perfect candidate for shifting blame, for being accused of something that they haven't done. And this usually is the kind of scapegoating which is a form of psychological projection, which is very commonly done by cluster B disordered people. So you have your narcissists, you have your sociopaths, psychopaths, and somewhere on the spectrum of the borderline who do this kind of scapegoating, where they scapegoat the innocent, and basically they shift blame, they project their negative qualities or their unresolved issues that they don't want to deal with onto that person. And the most common victims of this are children, usually in a who come from a disordered family, a dysfunctional family, or where a family where the setup is narcissistic, or maybe you have a combination of narcissism and alcoholism, drug addiction, and you will see that these children, when they grow up, they have this very deep sense of shame and guilt, even as adults, that they can't seem to shake off. And a, a lot of that is coming from that kind of scapegoating, because they are basically running around carrying the unresolved material for those who will not deal with it. Another kind of innocent scapegoating is where you have a group of people, a community, a minority perhaps, who lack power. It could be due to their socio-economic group, or it could be that they belong to a certain religious or racial minority, and there is a tendency again to push on the material that we don't want to deal with onto this these groups of people. And usually this is done by the communities or the groups of people that have more power. It happens all the time with it happens to women, it happens to LGBTQ people, it happens to people of certain races, where, for example, this is one of the reasons why sexual abuse or rape victims, women especially, tend to be accused of either lying about what happened to them or some way being responsible for what happened to them. And that is a type of a scapegoating, where you have the patriarchy which pushes on the blame of the unresolved material or the unwanted qualities of the predator onto the victim. And this is a very, very common type of scapegoating, where you, in a nutshell, scapegoat the innocent. Now, there's another type of scapegoating which is not talked about a lot. I couldn't find any material on it, but it is nonetheless significant, and I think it deserves a little bit of attention, because it is a very serious kind of scapegoating. And this kind of scapegoating is predominantly carried out by people of the lie. And who are people of the lie? So this is a book I really strongly recommend that you get. It's a book by Dr. M Scott Peck, and it is a very interesting read on the nature of evil. I don't entirely agree with every point in the book, but that's okay. I overall think it's an amazing book, and I've talked about it in some of my other videos. And in this book, Dr. Peck explains that the people of the lie are people who are in complete. Now, I'm not going to use the word denial, because denial is usually unconscious, right? Denial is when we don't want to accept something because it's too painful. So I'm going to have to find another word, a different kind of a denial, which is also what Dr. George Simon talks about in his book, Character Disorder, where you are very conscious that you are in denial, and you will not own your own evil. You will not own your own negativity, and you know that you have it. So this I'm not talking about people who are unconscious of what they're doing. They don't know what's going on inside them. They're not aware of their behavior and their qualities. I'm talking about people who are very well aware, but they consciously will not accept it, and they will pass on these qualities and project this unresolved evil, this unresolved material, onto the not so innocent. Why they're not so innocent? Because, well, isn't that an amazing place to park your unresolved material, because no one would know, because they're not so innocent, are people who, they're overtly or openly disordered, or overtly or openly badly behaved. They could be they are, and a lot of times they are designated criminals, and they're a perfect place to park this unresolved material, because, well, they're so obviously and overtly evil, which many of them are not actually, and no one would know. No one would know if you shifted the blame onto them, because they look like they're guilty anyway. And this kind of scapegoating to me is, well, scapegoating is bad. It's just really, really destructive. But that kind of scapegoating to me is really the highest level of evil in my understanding, and also from what I read in the book, it sort of validated how I felt about it. And I'd like to tell you a little bit of an anecdote from my experience of this kind of scapegoating on a first-hand basis. So, in the last few years, I had an opportunity to get to know and spend a lot of time with the kind of people that most people would not spend time with. And these were a community, a group of people who are drug dealers, prostitutes, con artists, and petty criminals. I'm talking about, small-time criminals who steal a little bit here, or con somebody a little bit there. And I had a chance to really study these group of people very closely. I became very close to some of these people. I had a chance to work therapeutically with some of them as well. And I realized, in these 4 years, I realized many things about these so-called designated criminals. And these are designated criminals because they are designated criminals by society. Now, I'm not going to turn around and say that, they're all innocent, and they are actually wonderful people, because some of them were really not wonderful people at all. Some of them really were very strongly sociopathic and dangerous. But many of them, I would say a majority of them, were not. They really were what one would call victims of circumstance. And I just want to make it clear before I go any further that this is not me trying to minimize the harm done by, people who have been victims of designated criminals, because I am an abuse survivor myself. I am on the side of the abused always, because I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like when someone says or does something that minimizes the predator's role in what they did. And that is not at all what I'm trying to say here. So I want to be very, very clear. I'm not taking the side of anyone who is an abuser at all. What I am trying to talk about is something I witnessed firsthand about how these designated criminals, who some were evil and some were really what Scott Peck says in the book, falling into evil. Like, they're not really evil, but they are desperate, and then they get into that situation where they're going to head in that direction. And these people I saw were hugely scapegoated on many levels. And the first level started with how they were scapegoated socio-economically. So think about it. Who are the people who do these kind of jobs? Like, drug dealing is illegal in most countries. Prostitution is illegal or not, but hey, it's not exactly a dream job. And being a con artist, of course, is totally illegal. Swindling is totally illegal. But especially drug dealing and prostitution, pimping. Who does these jobs? Think about that. It is really, there is something to be considered where you have people who are put in a position of socio-economic disadvantage, and they literally end up having to then go and do the jobs that nobody else would want to, want to do, but still want to participate in. And what do I mean by that? I mean, what I'm trying to say here is you'll have people who are very happy to buy their share of drugs from the drug dealer and go have a blast and party with that. But they are also very happy to call the drug dealer a criminal and talk about how awful drug dealers are. And these are the same people who will buy from drug dealers and then go out and party with those drugs and share those drugs with their friends and bargain with the drug dealer to get a good deal. They don't have an issue taking the drugs, but they have an issue with the drug dealer. And I'm like, this is just, it doesn't make any sense to me, because if you don't have an issue with if you have an issue with drugs, you don't do drugs. If you don't do drugs at all. But here you claim that you have an issue with the drug dealer, but you're doing the drugs. So that is one kind of a scapegoating itself, because basically that guy is doing the job for you, so you can have the drugs, but because you're in a position of privilege, you don't need to do that job. So it gets pushed on to somebody who is so desperate that that's all that they can do. That's all that they're pushed into that position. The same thing goes with prostitution. I really, my heart, I spent these 4 years spending a lot of time with sex workers and again, doing some sort of therapies for them, and also trying to understand them and getting to know them, and some even became friends. And these are the jobs that no way does anyone want to do that. And a lot of these women are really, really pushed into these situations because of socio-economic factors. So that is one kind of scapegoating right there. It's everybody's shit parked in a space where somebody has fallen into a situation where they have no choice but to take on that shit. So that is one level of scapegoating. The other level, I can't talk today. The other level is very, very frightening to me, because it really is the face of true evil. And that is where you have a person who is, as M Scott Peck says, like people of the lie. They're evil, they know they're evil, they know they're not the best morally wonderful people, but they have this facade of being morally wonderful people. Yeah, they're probably heads of businesses, they probably are priests or of a congregation, or whatever. They could be in positions of respect and power, and they look very respectable. They look and behave like they are the most pious, virtuous people you'd ever meet, but they are anything but. It just look beneath that veneer, and that's not who they are at all. And that's very frightening, because a lot of people think that's who they are. And I saw this in the time that I spent with this group of people, the designated criminals, how they were being scapegoated by people like that. So the designated criminals that I was researching and doing therapies for and spending time with, they happened to be living in a particular area where the local people in that area are some of the most evil people that I have ever seen in my life. And these are very respectable people. They are well presented, they are reasonably well dressed, they're reasonably well off. They go to church or the temple or whatever it is every week. They are prominent people in their society, but they have the blackest hearts that I have ever seen in my life. And they are very happy to scapegoat these designated criminals by accusing them of things that actually these guys have done, and then getting away with it because nobody would believe the designated criminal when he or she says that, oh, I didn't do that. And I saw this on so many occasions happen, right from a case that happened in front of me where one of these drug dealers was doing nothing, was just sitting in a restaurant, and he went to go up to the bathroom, and the owners came and took away his chair. They actually just very disrespectfully took away his chair. And he came back from the bathroom, and this guy is a drug dealer. He is and he's not very educated, and he's not very class, so he's not a particularly good communicator. So of course he was very upset, but he could feel on an instinctual level these guys are disrespecting him. But when he asked them for his chair back, they started screaming and yelling at him and threatening to call the police on him. And the police didn't come because that guy left the scene. But if they had come, this guy would have been arrested for no reason because, well, he's a designated criminal. He's a drug dealer, you know. And the people who were doing that to him, I know those people as well, and I know how evil they are. How black their heart is. But they are seen as the good guy, and now this guy becomes the bad guy because he's already half a bad guy. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm expressing this very well, but I'm trying to say that this is happening in our societies today, and it's very narcissistic. It's very, very dysfunctional, and it's very, very dangerous. It's very, very dangerous because it is the greatest cover up for evil ever. So I just thought I'd share this small snippet. I don't know how long I've been going on for because I don't have my contact lenses on, so I can't see the clock on my video. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any comments or questions about what I have said, or if you faced a similar experience, please do let me know. Thank you and goodbye.